Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel once again. In this video I'm going to show you how I covered the top tier using fondant. I've been getting a lot of requests to do a video on how I cover my cakes using fondant. So this was a wedding cake, but I only filmed the top part so that I can give you an idea of how to cover your cakes using fondant. So I was given a picture by the client of the cake that she wanted, and it was black. So these are the cakes that I covered, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to cover the fourth cake. So this is a 6 inches cake that I'm going to cover using a kg of black fondant. I've slightly kneaded it prior. It's ready to roll fondant from Sweet Celebrations. So the trick is, if you're going to cover a circle, then you need to roll your fondant into a circle. So I just slightly kneaded the fondant first into a circle before I started rolling, so that I can roll it out into a circle. So the fondant is quite hard to roll because it's winter. Fondant has got a tendency to harden when it's winter. The second trick is to roll your fondant into a circle of diameter that is equal to the height of the cake that you want to cover multiplied by 2 plus the diameter of the cake that you want to cover. So I just plugged out some air bubbles using a pin. So I'm going to go onto my cake and just roughly measure how much I need for the diameter of this cake. So I just used my rolling pin and I'm happy with that diameter. So you should roll your fondant into approximately 1/2 centimeter. That's the thickness that you should roll your fondant into. If it's too thin, it's going to start cracking, and if it's too thick, you're not going to be able to smooth your cake evenly when you cover it. I'm brushing the cake with a little bit of water so that the fondant is going to be able to stick onto the cake. I crumb coated this cake with using a mixture of marzipan and fondant. So I did this a couple of days before so that I give it enough time to dry out, so that when I'm now working my fondant onto the cake, I can be able to work my edges and sides into sharp edges. The next thing I'm going to do is to lift the fondant onto the cake. Make sure that you position your fondant centrally. So the first thing you will do is to smoothen the top. So I'm plucking out an air bubble that formed when I transferred the fondant and smoothing the top using my smoother. So using the edge of my hands, I'm just going to work the edges first and then slightly work the fondant down the edges of the cake. So take note, as I'm doing this, I'm opening the folds and gently smoothing the fondant down using my fingers. Take note not to stretch or pull your fondant at this point. And every time that you smooth it down, make sure that you open the folds so that you don't end up with sides that have got folds on them. And also, as you smooth your fondant down, just take note to be turning the cake as you do so, because you have to move at the same rate and cover your cake at the same rate. So that's why you have to be turning the cake gradually opening the folds and smoothing the fondant down. So it's important not to stretch your fondant at this point, because if you do, it's going to start cracking. So just let it flow naturally. All you have to do is to open the folds and smooth it onto the cake. So I'm almost done, and as you get to the bottom, you kill the edges, you continue killing the edges, and when you're now at the bottom, you can now use your smoothener to secure the edges onto the cake. The third trick when you're working with fondant is to have two smootheners. So I like to have this long one because it's long enough to cover the full height of my cakes. Even when the cakes are quite tall, I can still be able to smooth the side and cover the entire side. And then you use a second smoothener. So the short one is the one that I just use to smooth the sides, and then I use the angled smoothener to just hold the cake in position while I use the small one to smoothen. So you should always have two smootheners if you want to end up with perfect edges and sides. So I have smoothened the sides, and the next thing I'm going to do is to angle my two smootheners like this and start working the edges. So again, remember, don't be in a rush to end up with a sharp edge at once. With fondant, you should work it gradually so that you get uniform results. So I'm doing the first round around the edges so that I work my edges into sharp edges. I'm going to repeat that again until I end up with a sharp edge. So in case you're wondering how I ended up with a blue cake when I'm using black fondant, so the story is the client sent us a black cake, a black and gold design. So when she came to view her cake a day before the wedding, she was like, "But you made a black cake when I sent you a blue design." I said, "No, the cake that you sent is black." Then she said, "No, that's blue." I said, "No, that's definitely black." So we ended up getting the original inspiration, and we realized that it was black. The cake was black. The cake that she sent as an inspiration for us to do, she had mentioned that she wanted it as exactly as it is in the picture. So in my head, I was thinking, I don't have enough time to redo this cake because the wedding is tomorrow. At the same time, we can't give the bride a black cake. And I'm thinking it's almost impossible to change a color from a darker shade to a lighter shade. So I was thinking, how am I going to correct this? So I decided to, you know how I always like use shimmer for all my cakes. So I decided to use our blue lustre powder to try and give it a hint of navy blue. So I airbrushed the blue lustre onto the black cake, and there it was, the solution. So the trick is to move from a darker shade to a lighter shade. You have to airbrush using something that's not gonna be absorbed into the cake. I'm quite happy with how the edges are looking. As you can see, I'm using my angled smoothener to check if I've got straight edges. So I've got straight sides, and I'm also happy with the top part. So yeah, the next thing we're going to do is to just cut out the excess fondant Remember, this is a tier that's gonna sit on other cakes, so we don't need this excess fondant. But if it was a standalone cake, we can proceed to just smooth it as well on the board, so that you cover the board where your cake is sitting on. So in this case, I use a separator board underneath my cake. You can't really see it. That's the whole point of using separators. They are supposed to be invisible boards. So I'm going to lift that cake off from that board. So I'm going to just knead the excess fondant and then cover it using cling wrap. So the good thing about fondant is you can always reuse the excess. So I'm covering it with cling wrap, because if you leave it in the open, it will start to dry out. So I'm cleaning off the edges, and yeah, this is basically it, guys. This is how you cover your fondant cakes. So if you are going to be working with sponges, then you might consider crumb coating your sponge cakes using either buttercream or ganache. So yeah, this is it. This is basically how you cover your cakes. So I'm going to go ahead and stick my cakes. I didn't record the part where I do that because it's part of my wedding cake class program. So if you want to register for the class, I have attached a flyer where you see the details. So this is the result after airbrushing and stacking the cake. These are the details for the wedding cake classes. If you want to register, be sure to contact me on the number above. If you found this video helpful, please share it with your friends and other bakers, and also subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much once again.